What is up, spooky people?
Welcome back to Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two Girls, One Ghost. And we are your ghostesses. That is Corinne. And
Hello.
I am Sabrina. And I don't know why I'm like clutching myself. I'm like,
The intensity of ghost stories.
Spirits.
My God. Spirits among us.
Speaking of spirits and speaking of like trying to get more in touch with our abilities and the spiritual world this year of 2023, I figured maybe we would start by doing a tarot poll.
Okay,
Pulling our
great.
cards.
Yeah, because you have that app now and you're learning all about tarot. So this is your practice.
It is. It's fascinating to learn. And I feel like the more I do it, the more familiar I'm getting with the cards.
Right.
I don't
Do we
think I
have to
can
pull
do it
it
for you. I think we
Okay,
each have to do our own.
I do have the app because you told me about it. So what are you doing? Are you doing one card? Are you doing the daily 3?
You know what? I'm going to do past, present, future.
Oh, okay. And the name of this app is called Labyrinthos.
Yes.
So let us
I love
see.
it. Okay. Do you want me to start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my past is the 6 of Pentacles. Compassion and understanding breeds generosity, sharing, and charity. One gives away the fruits of one's labor with the understanding that the situation of having the upper hand can be reversed at any moment. Okay, that's my past.
It's a little ominous.
Yeah. My present is the Chariot reversed. Oh, God.
Oh, no. What is it?
Lack of control, lack of direction, and aggression. Being at the mercy of 2 opposing forces, constantly battling for domination. There is a sense that you have lost control here, that you are not at the driver's seat, that you are a passive observer, and you must begin to understand what is in your life that you can and cannot drive, and what you can, and let what you cannot go. Okay. I guess there's a lesson to be learned in that, but like I don't like the chaos. Oh God, my future.
No, Sabrina. Dang it.
It's the 4 of Cups reversed. And the 3 words that are categorized are boredom, taking for granted, aloofness. In your search for something meaningful, you have perhaps been led to ignore the potential happiness that is given to you. So much inner focus has made you lose your way, and you have begun to deny the wonders that the world offers. Find balance. You must both look inward and out.
Okay.
Know.
You know, I think in tarot in general, there's just, it relates to something within us, right? Usually there's something to be learned. There's something for us to work on. There's something we can pull.
Yeah, but it just feels a bit amorphous. It's like there's no control, and then there's like, but if you spend too much time inside yourself, then you will lose direction and be misled. And it's like, well, who am I?
Who am I? You're working to find that out. I think you're very close to knowing exactly who you want to be and who you are.
You know what? Actually, let me just scratch all that. The past 30 seconds, Sabrina, goodbye. I have been so freaking empowered lately, and I've been doing a lot of like writing my hobbies and who I am and what I like about myself. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm a freaking badass. I'm empowered. I'm a
you are
crazy cool ass woman. And it feels good to be like, hell yeah, I do know who I am. And I am proud of myself. And there is a lot that I have to offer to the world. Screw being invisible. 2023, look at me. Here I am.
Look at you. Oh my gosh, Sabrina, I could shed a tear right now with how much, how much you have grown and how much control now you have over yourself and your thoughts about yourself.
Yes.
Sabrina last year would be like, no one can see me. I'm just a wee little person right here. Don't look at me. And now you're going to let yourself shine.
I'm taking up space.
And I'm a fan of that.
Watch out.
Take up space. We're all here for it. We're trying to give you the space. And now you have a lot of room to take up.
Yeah, thanks.
My curtain bangs are driving me batshit crazy. Where do I put them?
They look so good though.
I don't know.
Now you have like alien antlers. I like it.
They're just slightly shorter than my biannual curtain bangs are back, but just a wee bit shorter than I had hoped for. So I have no control.
No, they look great.
I'm going to do just a single card. Let's just see.
Okay.
Daily reading. The Knight of Swords. The power of an idea to overwhelm is represented by the Knight of Swords. Filled with the vision of an idea, he is propelled forward with unbridled ambition. Though his energy is great, there's also a warning associated with being unconscious about consequences and obstacles. That feels very applicable right now to me.
Yeah, but you have so many ideas that you are pursuing in this year, and I feel like you are aware of the obstacles.
Yes, it's just one of the things in my personality, which the more I spend time on TikTok, the more I think maybe I'm just undiagnosed ADHD. But one of the things with my personality is like when I have an idea and I'm so passionate about it, I like throw myself in so hard. I'm like, I will figure it out. Even if I know the consequences, I'm like, that's okay. I'll take them as they come, blah, blah, blah. But then sometimes I quit. Then I just like toss that out. What's next week? Like, what's my new passion next week?
Okay, let's rephrase. It's not quitting. It is deciding that it no longer benefits you and you're moving on to things that do fulfill you more.
True. If only I didn't spend money on those things, though. That's the bad part.
Are you talking about crocheting?
No, I want to keep crocheting. I'm going to. I have crochet trouble right now because I want to master my one crochet, but I need a certain yarn and the yarn isn't available. And I'm just gonna pick it back up. It's not a lost cause. It's just probably gonna happen like once a month.
Yeah, that's fine.
At random times. One thing that we don't quit though is the podcast. And
never.
We have some exciting things that we're trying to plan this year. One of them being that we are going to do more crossovers and spend more time with some other podcast friends.
Our pals.
So, I mean, we have some things planned, which you guys will find out about soon enough. But would also love to hear what everybody else wants. So if you have ideas for us this year,
to hang out with,
you want us to connect with, that would be awesome so that we can figure out who everybody spends time with in their ear holes.
Who are your podcast pals that you want to be our podcast pals?
Right.
This is like blind dating. Yeah, matchmaking. You're setting us up on dates.
Set us up, please.
I also so badly, Corinne, I know we've talked about this and we talked about it on Campfire Stories, RIP, love those. We're going to figure out what to do with those in the new year. But I really, really, really want to do our 24-hour live stream with our podcast friends. It would be so fun. We should do it from
it really would be
a haunted location and like slumber party style. Like people can switch out and like take naps and then come join, and we'll just
have like a cluster of bean bags in the background.
Yes.
Some people are
sleeping.
passed the hell out. I couldn't sleep on film because my greatest fear is that I will fart in my sleep and everyone will watch me do it.
There will be a second room where people can sleep.
I need to be in a padded soundproof room. You know how like people who have podcast studios, they have the foam all over? I need that, but for my sleeping room so you don't hear me.
Spit out my coffee.
It's a fear.
Corinne.
It's a big one.
We'll put you in like, if we do it at like the Charleston jail, we'll just give you your own little cell. It's like Corinne's farting cell.
I wouldn't sleep a wink there. Let's be real. If anything was coming out of me, it'd be pee from being so scared, especially if you leave me alone in a room. That's terrifying.
Really, really fun when I'm delusional. So I won't sleep the whole time. I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm excited about this prospect of a thing that doesn't exist yet, but it will.
But we've been talking about it for so long and we haven't forgotten about it. I think that's one of the differences. It's like the things that we always talk about doing, we actually behind the scenes will make plans to do. And like we do put in effort. It's not like the million business ideas where we say it once and then we never bring it up again. The few things that we bring up time and time again, like we do really want to do.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, we want to do all of them, but
we do. And we want to tell ghost stories.
Yes, we do. And I have a confession to make.
What?
I researched the wrong thing and discovered that this morning.
Because I noticed last night in the Excel it said something completely different than what it said this morning.
It did. And here's my mistake. I had put into our Excel sheet that I was going to look at the Robinson, Woods, and Hauntings. I will do that in the future. But where I went wrong in my initial Google search was I typed in that, I think, and then something came up about Robinson family murder. And then I think I just clicked on it out of intrigue and forgot entirely that it wasn't supposed to be the thing that I was working on. And so I just fully covered a murder case.
Oh, okay.
I did find other hauntings in the vicinity to talk about at the end. But this morning I was like, shit,
the beauty
I can't
of
redo it
this
now.
Is we make our own rules, and it's not a mistake, Corinne. You did it on purpose.
Yeah. If I hadn't told you, you wouldn't know.
Or
That's
maybe
the
the universe cosmically wanted you to tell this story instead of the one that you were going to do. So,
ooh.
I don't know.
Well,
everything happens for a reason.
I do it justice. There's so much more to the story, but initially, like, I was leaving out some details because I was like, okay, well, like, you know, I got to leave room for all the hauntings, right?
Of course.
Right. Yeah. And then those are pretty much not going to be here. But I will still give you a few details of this case. So, trigger warning up top. This episode involves violent crime against a family, including young children.
Oof.
It's sad. Very, very sad. So, in 1968, the Robinson family, they were brutally murdered. Now, over 50 years later, no one has been charged with the murder, and the case remains open. In the sleepy town of Goodhart, Michigan, neighbors began to complain of a foul odor coming from the direction of the Robinsons' cottage. The Robinsons' cottage was a log and stone cottage placed on a quiet, winding road not far from the village and resort. It sat just 100 feet away from Lake Michigan. So very quaint, very picturesque, you know, like a true summer retreat. Like I would love to, it sounds like all the places, Sabrina, you and I are like, let's go on a podcast retreat somewhere and like, a writing retreat and stay at this like beautiful scenic place. And that was their home. That was the house that this cottage they had purchased for their family to go vacation. Mm-hmm. But now there was this horrible, horrible odor emanating from it. The stench from the cabin permeated the woods and carried over the waters, and people started to complain. So neighbors who owned properties started to complain. And also, I believe people who were staying at the nearby resorts started to complain that there was a smell as well.
Wow, this story just right away starts off really, really horrific.
It's horrific all the way through, unfortunately.
Yikes.
It's a really tough one.
All right.
It's hard because it's like, we don't dabble in true crime that much. And so when we do, I'm kind of like, oh gosh,
makes me sad.
Sad. Yeah. There's not much like redeemable moments in many of the cases. No. It's just horrifying thing after horrifying thing. So on July 22nd, the caretaker walked up to the Robinsons' cottage and knocked. The caretaker was someone who he had built this cabin himself, or this cottage, and built a lot of the other neighboring cottages, and then worked as the caretaker, caring for the land, especially because so many of these homes were seasonal. So he goes up and he knocks on the Robinsons' cottage, and nobody answered. He tried the door. It was locked. And concerned for their well-being, he pried the molding away from the door to gain entry into the cottage. Upon opening the door, he saw Shirley Robinson, the mother, and she was laying on her stomach, and there was a plaid blanket draped over her body, covering everything from the knees up. It was very clear to him that something horrible had happened and that Shirley was likely dead. So he backpedaled very quickly, and he ran for a phone where he called the police.
And when Michigan, it's interesting the fact that she was covered with a blanket, to me, indicates like someone. I don't know much about murder and forensic psychology, but that to me, based on what I've heard, it sounds like that it's personal, right? Like someone then
Yeah. Well, and
covering and
oftentimes
caring for the body.
when someone does something like that to the body, yes, personal, but then also it's a telltale sign of like a killer's remorse, right?
Yeah.
Too, where suddenly they're like, oh no, and then they try to do something caring and like maternal or paternal towards that person, and so like covering them with a blanket could be considered as such. But in this case, they do believe that the reason she had been positioned in that way and covered with the blanket was to mislead police and make it look like a sexually driven crime. So
interesting. Okay.
When Michigan State Police arrived, they found 6 people inside. So first person was Shirley. She was 40 years old, and she was the only person visible from the front door. She was laying in the corner of the living room, having been shot 1 time in the head. She was posed in that way with her legs more open and covered with a blanket. I don't know what the killer's intent was, especially given that there were so many other bodies further on into the cabin. If it was a sexually driven crime, obviously the police are going to find the other bodies. So I'm not quite sure what happened, but she was only moved. I don't think she was attacked in any sexual manner other than being attacked by being shot in the head, in which she, I think, died immediately. Down the hall. This is, I mean, guys, I'm sorry. This is like, this is heavy. This is a lot.
Well, you gave
There's
a trigger
lot going on here.
warning, so, you know, people know what's going on.
Yes. Okay, so a hallway then led. So when you entered the cabin, basically the way that it was situated was there was the door that led into the living room. And then from the living room, there was a long hallway where there was a kitchen and 3 bedrooms. So the only way in and out was through that door. You could only see the living room from the front door. But then as you made your way back, you could see the kitchen and the 3 bedrooms. Okay. So in the hallway from the living room, Shirley's husband, Dick, who was 42 years old, he was lying on the floor. He had suffered blunt force trauma to his head, a gunshot wound in his chest, and another shot to his head from a different gun. So now we know there are 2 guns and an object used for blunt force trauma. So 3 weapons were used. Their kids, 2 of their kids, Randall, 12 years old, and Susan, 7 years old, were also in the hallway. Randall was laying on top of his father, and a rug was placed on top of him. Susan was lying on the floor next to her father.
This is just so sad.
It really is. It's really interesting, too. Like, I don't really know exactly what they thought of the rug being placed on top of Randall. Yeah. But Susan being 7 years old, she was the only daughter, and she was the youngest child. So, age 7.
Jeez.
And this is also hard to say. And so I'm removing a lot of the details as to how these kids had passed, but there was evidence of gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma objects being used. The 2 children that were older, Richie, 19, and Gary, 16. So they have 4 kids in total, ranging from age 7 to 19. So the 2 oldest, Richie and Gary, were found in one of the 3 bedrooms in the back, having been shot multiple times in the head. The evidence
it's like
at
execution
the scene,
style. That's so awful.
It is.
It just, I'm sure you'll get more into this and like how like the police, you know, tried to like determine the order of how it happened. Mm-hmm. But like when you said that the dad had blunt force trauma to the head, to me that was like, oh, maybe he tried to confront whoever the attackers were. But then the 2 children having been attacked with something other than being just, you know, killed and dying by the gunshot wounds is like, that's so violent and unnecessary and overkill. And these are just innocent, tiny children who are defenseless.
Right. Exactly. Too. And like for someone to have 2 guns, we know that they're, well, from the forensics and from the investigation, it was believed that there was 1 single killer. And yet we know that there were 2 guns that were brought to the scene. And then there was the object for blunt force trauma. And I do believe that that object was recovered in the house. The guns were not. So
Okay.
from what it sounds like, and there's not a ton of details about what this object is, but to me, what I thought may have happened was that someone grabbed an object that was nearby within the cottage to try to defend themselves. And then when you have children that are very small and a woman and a man who's trying to also protect all of their children, how easy would it probably be for someone who has 2 weapons on them to take that object away and then in a rage use it on the people again? So
Jeez.
I'm assuming that's the reason why that object was used, because otherwise the killer didn't need it, right? He had 2 guns and these people were on a family vacation. They were not anticipating anything like this happening, and they were not.
Right.
They were trapped. They were cornered.
Ugh.
So, man,
I just want to say
heavy.
that Leia usually does not come like on her own free will to come sit on my lap, but she is so snuggled into my lap right now and jumped up here on her own.
She's trying to give you comfort because this is a stressful story.
Yeah.
This is very stressful.
Thank you
Guys,
for being
we'll go
so
to the Robinson
intuitive.
Woods.
My little
The Robinson
baby.
Woods and Hauntings sometime, but
That's nice. Okay.
I apologize. So the evidence at the scene suggested that there was a single person who committed these atrocious acts. And the evidence showed or suggested that the first shot was shot from a rifle through the cottage window. So the killer was actually outside shooting inside, like sniper style.
What the hell?
And that first shot
gosh.
hit and killed Dick Robinson and one of the boys, teenage boys. So now 2 of the older, larger people in the house have been killed before the perpetrator even enters the cottage, which might make a little more sense as to why it was such a mad scramble.
But then, okay. But then why did the dad have blunt force trauma to the head? It's like, that's even more overkill. If he's already...
Well, if he's the target, right, and all the emotion is going out on him, perhaps that's the reason.
Okay.
Because
okay.
he was shot multiple times too and had blunt force trauma. So it was overkill specifically with him.
It's just so fascinating. Like, I feel like when people are angry or have like very high emotions, I'll speak for myself personally. Like, my inclinations or ideations are more self-related, and I've never, ever, ever had like homicidal ideations. But the fact that that's a thing for people is so hard for me to understand.
Right. The people see red and they just go after. And also, like, you're probably going to get caught, right?
Yes.
So, like, what's really going to come of this? Because
what's the benefit?
You're still going to be harmed. Whatever you thought this person could do to you, or how they would affect you, or whatever thrill you would get from doing this to someone else, that's all going to be taken away from you because you're going to rot in jail.
And in hell. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of like afterlife shit that you're going to go through. And
yeah. Well, I sure hope so.
Yeah. God, I hate people.
It's bad. Yeah. Okay. So basically the police realized that 2 people, the father and an older boy, had been killed before the murderer gained entry into the cottage. And then the murderer chased down the 3 other children and their mother and murdered them.
Jeez,
the killer then, after killing everybody, the entire Robinson family, the killer then closed the curtains, placed blankets and rugs on top of the youngest boy, Randall, and the mother, Shirley, turned up the heat in the cottage, placed bodies, specifically the dad's body, Dick, over the heating vent, which then sped up decomposition, stuffed cardboard in the bullet holes in the window, which I don't know if that was to either make it less noticeable or keep all the air inside. I don't know. But then they locked the door and they left. And that was it.
So is it one of those doors that you can lock from the inside and close it and it?
I think so.
Like, Yeah. Okay.
It's a summer cottage, right? Like it's not this like fortified home. I'm fairly certain it was like a seasonal cottage. Like you couldn't spend any time there. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. It's probably not winterized. Well, there's a heater.
But there is the heater. Yeah, I don't know. But it wasn't, I mean, and also it probably was one of the doors that you can lock from the inside. And then also if we think about it, like this was the 60s in this tiny little town that had basically a population of a couple hundred people. They were in a really quiet street. The chances of them having locked their doors at that time period and where they were, it probably was open.
Well, okay. I'm just, trying to get inside the mind of a killer. Everything that is happening is confusing. And this is why I'm not a police detective, because I would not be good at it. But like putting the body specifically on the heater, there's just so much time spent in the aftermath of it that is confusing. Like, what is the point of all of that?
But then also, perhaps, so the killings probably happened in a very short amount of time, right? Because two shots happened from outside of the cottage, and then the people that were left inside of the cottage were smaller, and the placement of their bodies, they were closer together. So they were probably in the process of running from him and were basically shot immediately. So I'm assuming that maybe the entire thing from the time that the perpetrator sent off that first shot to them leaving maybe was 10 minutes max, because the cottage is really small. It's not a very big place. It's kind of like a cabin. Like it's a very small home. And two, I also am assuming, and this is like just my opinion, obviously there's no evidence published that suggests that this is what happened, but I would assume that the person who did this, the person that they think did this, which I'll tell you about in a minute, probably was so flustered that the decisions that they were making, to your point, didn't make sense, right? They were just like scrambling to get out of there, acting on impulse, was like, oh, I should do this and that. And so it was like a mix match of weird things. So obviously this rattled everybody. Everyone was like, who the hell could do such a terrible thing? What type of person goes to a family's holiday cottage and mass murders all of them one by one, hunting them down? It's just atrocious. The Robinson family, they had spent most of their year in the Detroit area, which is where Dick, the father, worked in advertising and publishing. He had two different companies. Okay. And then the family owned this summer cottage nicknamed Somerset and had just arrived there in early June. They'd been murdered not long after arriving. And by the time the caretaker had discovered Shirley's body and alerted police, 27 days had passed since the family had been murdered.
27
Isn't
days.
Isn't that wild? 27
no wonder
days.
Everyone was complaining about the smell. But then that's...
The smell. And also it gives you an idea of how remote their cottage is too. Yeah. Right? Like there isn't people just walking by. It's like there's not a footpath nearby. It really had to reek and it makes it so frustrating because 27 days, like whoever the killer is, can be freaking across the world at this point. Exactly. And you don't know who else may have walked around those grounds and found different pieces of evidence maybe laying down and not realizing what it was and taking it with them. You know, there's a lot of people that go there for summer holidays that are now gone back home. Like you have no idea who was there at that time. And just, it's a huge hindrance to the case. Like basically right on the lake? Mm-hmm. It's just about 100 feet up from Lake Michigan. So from the killer could also have like disposed of things in the lake, and that's a massive lake. Like that's not absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's the tippy top of northern Michigan too, if anyone is wondering exactly where this is. Okay. So obviously, because so much time passed, yes, there were all of these things where it's like the killer could have left by now. Evidence could have been tampered with. Now the bodies are in these advanced stages of decomposition, so there's a little bit less evidence likely on their bodies to clue investigators into what possibly happened. So the town, they're freaking out. it's a very quiet town. Like this town at the time had a gas station and a general store. It basically was considered almost a ghost town. Like it used to have a bumbling community with a bunch of different shops and whatnot, and it also had a Native American population in the late 1800s, and then things happen,
and terrible
and
settlers.
Now it's right, and now there's like 200 people living here, and full time I'm guessing probably less.
Yeah,
since
definitely.
So many of the people that own homes live somewhere else.
Right.
So everybody's freaking out because this is, again, it's the classic true crime documentary when everyone's like, it was a quiet, quaint town, like, and no one locked their doors. It wasn't supposed to happen here.
Right, it was safe.
It's never supposed to happen.
Nothing like this has
anywhere.
ever happened. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
and
it shouldn't
exactly
happen anywhere in the world, to be honest. So yeah, murder should always be shocking.
Happen anywhere. Right. Exactly. So the police, there's not that many people to talk to. So they start talking to everybody. They talk to the neighbors. They talk to the locals. What had they seen? What had they heard? Was there anything suspicious that they'd noticed around the time of these killings? And were there any people that they knew of that maybe had a vendetta against this family? There was a man and a teenager who were local to the area, and when police had talked to them, they actually said that the Robinsons had hired them to do some tree trimming, and they reported hearing raised voices and rapid gunshots when they were doing tree trimming in that area on June 25th. So now we think that this is exactly when, this is the date of when this all happened. It must have been June 25th.
If you hear raised voices and gunshots, why wouldn't you report it?
So it's because they're so close. It's such a wooded area, and they're also so close to the lake that these people, this man and this younger boy, it happened so quickly. So again, that's kind of why I think that the crime happened so quickly, because it was just like a few raised voices, a bunch of gunshots, and then it was nothing. And so they assumed that people were like duck hunting down by the beach or like shooting squirrels or like something like that. The excitement, like a bunch of shots, and then it's done.
The Kitty Genovese story, like the bystander effect, where it just like you think someone else is reporting it, or you're like, oh, that's nothing. It just makes me
It
doesn't hurt they didn't report things.
Yeah, but I get it too, because there's so many times, especially in Boston, where like I'll hear something. I mean, now we have like the Citizen app, right? Where people can see what's going on. But even back in Vermont, like there were totally times when I would hear something and I'd be like, what was that? Was that a gunshot? And then I'm like, okay, well, it could be someone hunting, or it could be someone lighting off fireworks. And if you don't hear anything after that, you're like, oh, it's fine. Like there's no blood curdling scream. It must have just been something, there's noises that happen like this all the time.
That's true. And I'm saying this knowing fully that I've also probably done things like that, where I've heard a scream or like something and I'm like, oh, that's probably nothing, and if I don't hear it again, I'm just like, okay, move on with my life.
Right. And too, it's hard because like even when people do report things, if you don't necessarily know exactly what you're reporting, a lot of times, depending on where you are, there aren't enough resources to just respond to an odd a bang sound in the woods.
Yeah.
A sound. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it does discourage some people. And of course the bystander effect, right? Like it does happen. It's hard to evaluate exactly what's going on. And so for these two people, they thought it was just, the quick succession of gunshots and yells. They thought it was probably just people hunting down by the water. Mm-hmm. They were far enough away where they couldn't see the cottage or any of that activity. But now we have a date, right? Based on the decomposition of the bodies, and based on what these two people heard when they were nearby the cottage, the date had to have been June 25th.
Okay.
But who wanted these people dead? So now we have a date. We know the murder weapons or how these people died, but we don't know who yet. The entire investigation lasted 15 months, but by week 2, the second week on the case, the police turned their eyes onto the family's close acquaintances, specifically one man. This man was Joseph Scalaro III, age 30, and he was Dick's business partner, and he became the prime suspect. All right, so the police are like, okay, Joe, what is your alibi? What were you doing on June 25th, 1968? What were you doing a couple weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
And Joe said that he had talked to Dick and they had spoken on the phone, and Dick had asked him if the company checks had made it to the Southfield office. He wanted to make sure the checks got there. And Joe had been back with the two businesses and was basically like put in charge by Dick to make sure everybody gets paid, to make sure all of the invoices go through. He was handling the money, keeping the operation going, which there was some struggles with the business too. But this guy was the point person to keep everything afloat while Dick was at his summer vacation home with his family. So
also,
according
just
to Joe,
point this out, Joe, who is his business partner, if they're talking on the phone occasionally and like, you know, working together while Dick's on vacation with his family, he would have reported, hey, I haven't heard from my business partner in a really long time. It sounds like something's up, because it's almost a month that has gone by.
that is a very, very good point, Sabrina. I didn't think about that. I mean, that should be like the biggest red flag ever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he said absolutely nothing. But apparently his alibi for the last time that he spoke to, and also by the time I think cops had gotten to him and made him a suspect, it was probably now 5 weeks that had gone by or so since the family had been murdered. So Joe was like, oh, Dick was just asking if the checks got there okay. Okay. Well, if that was the last time he spoke to his boss, when was the last time he saw his boss? And also, was his alibi even really correct? So they look at Joe's statement and what he had said about that phone call that he had with Dick. He downplayed exactly what happened. Apparently, Dick's secretary had called Dick saying that there was some money missing from the account, and then Dick called Joe and asked where it was. And the conversation was not civil at all. It involved a lot of yelling and a lot of screaming. So now it's like, okay,
Joe,
we know you were
money.
lying. Embezzler. So, right. They're like, okay, well, we know what the last time you spoke to him, and we know that you lied about what that conversation was. So when was the last time you actually saw your boss? According to Joe, he was not at the cottage. But also, he didn't have an alibi. In fact, he was missing for 12 hours. None of his friends, family, and acquaintances could account for his whereabouts for 12 hours on that day. Looking pretty guilty, Joe.
Another red flag there.
Another
Joe.
red flag. The murder weapons used at the Robison family's cottage just so happened to also be the same model of guns owned by Joe Scalaro. Joe said yes, he did purchase those types of guns. In fact, he purchased 2 pairs of each gun, giving one of the pistols to Dick, a gift, and then giving away the other rifles. But the guns used at the crime scene were definitely not his, he said. Those are not mine. But horrible chances for them to, yes. And so everybody's like, okay.
Red flag, red flag. Pop, pop,
Red
pop,
flag.
pop, red flag.
1,000 red flags.
Yeah.
So Joe didn't really think this through, right? Like, he's just lying left and right to the police, because the police, they're policing. Like, they're being good investigators in this case. They're actually, they're not fumbling the bag here. So they go to Joe's father-in-law's private shooting range after getting some tips that led them in that direction. And guess what they found? They found 4 shell casings that matched the exact shell casings from the crime scene. So now we know whoever was in that private shooting range that was Joe's father-in-law's had the same exact murder weapon that was used to murder the Robinson family.
Okay. How?
Right?
How is this an unsolved murder? How? I know you're going to get there, but
I'll tell you.
Okay.
Yes. And to make it even more of a like, holy shit, this is the guy. The spent cartridges at the shooting range and at the crime scene were a rare 1968 Finnish brand of bullets sold only for a limited time and only sold for a few weeks in Michigan prior to the Robinsons family murder. Out of all the people in the state of Michigan who purchased this ammunition in that short period of a few weeks, Joseph Scalaro was one of them.
I can't.
And just a few people had purchased them. So obviously we know Joe was a liar. He did it, right? There's so many inconsistencies. Right. Like there's just so much freaking evidence and so many inconsistencies. Well, I can't even speak with his alibi and with his statement.
There's like no words to say except for like, ooh, because it's just like, frustrating.
Yes.
That there's no words that can come out to,
hello, like he's guilty, right? That's, I think, what we're all thinking. But everybody's like, okay, well, why did Joe Scalaro want his boss dead? Because, you know, not everybody knows that maybe he was taking some money. Turns out Joe definitely took some money. And he had given himself a sizable raise and increased his expense account limit. And he also did this for other employees too. And no, this was not at the permission of Dick. So he was giving out money mostly to himself, but also to some other people, which I don't know who those people were. Maybe he was dating.
Which makes me wonder if they knew that Joe was taking money and were blackmailing him. Like, hey, we know what you're doing. Do it for us too.
Oh, maybe. Oh, that's an interesting theory. Yeah, perhaps. And then the poor secretary, she's like probably not getting paid hardly anything at all. And she's the one that uncovers this.
That she caught it.
And tattletales.
Yeah.
She caught it. She caught it. Good thing for her, but also horrible because then it led Joe into this rage and killed this whole family. So
let's just say Joe, it's all on Joe. F Joe.
It's all on Joe. It's all on Joe. Absolutely. But I wish the secretary got paid more money because I just know she didn't get paid enough for all of that and the trauma that came after the fact.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So Joe had been getting away with this because he was taking Dick's pre-signed checks and increasing pay on these checks by putting in a number different than what he normally did. So I guess it was like a normal practice. So there was nothing to like double check or like raise suspicion for him because he was doing it all correctly for a while. But then suddenly he started taking these checks and writing in increased amounts. A short enough time to not get caught until the secretary raised the flag. Was murdering Dick always the plan? Or was Joe so red with rage that he then got into his car and drove straight to the cottage to kill Dick Robinson before Dick could tell other people what Joe had done? Surely he wouldn't kill an entire family over embezzling $60,000, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just so horrible.
Yep. I did a inflation calculator to see what $60,000 in 1968 would be today. And it is just over $500,000, $500,000. People kill for that money.
I mean, people kill for less, you know?
People do.
But it's just awful that it had to be. And it's like, okay, how long is this drive from wherever Joe is to the lake house? Because
okay, yes, this is an interesting theory. So some people are team Joe didn't do it because they're like, there's no way he could have driven there in the amount of time to commit this crime and get back. Yeah, he could have. He was unaccounted for 12 hours. In rush hour, I did the path. In rush hour, it takes between 4 and like maybe 5 hours and 20 minutes to get there. So if he hit all the traffic, and let's say it took him 5.5 hours, he would still have an hour, probably more, to commit this crime. And if we take into the account what the two people who were doing some tree trimmings had heard, they said it was a burst of shots and yelling in a short succession. So it wasn't a long period of time. It was quick. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and he's back on the road. He's heading home.
But for 4.5 hours, he is driving to this cottage. And what's he thinking? Like, for me, to imagine someone so caught in rage that they want to kill their friend, their business partner, that they get into their car with their weapons and drive 4.5 hours and do not calm down and do not change their mind or reconsider or anything. Like,
right.
To be that blind with rage for that long.
And it's not like a bad conversation got worse, right? It's not like he was going just to yell at Dick and try to like cover his tracks. He started killing them before they saw him. from outside of the cottage. He went, he grabbed his weapons. He packed his 2 guns. He had intent.
So it's thought out. Yeah. It is. Yeah. He knew what
I
he was
don't know
doing.
how he ever thought he would get away with it or what. Or maybe he didn't care if he got away with it.
Apparently he did. Okay. I'll keep listening.
Apparently. Okay. All right. So clearly there's a lot of evidence against Joseph Scalaro. It looks obvious to many people, to us, to police, that he committed these murders. He killed 4 children, an entire family at their summer cottage because he was upset that he had been caught embezzling money. We assume that Joe goes to jail now, right?
You assume?
No, he doesn't. And I'm no law expert. I'll say that now. So I don't quite know how the hell this possibly happened. But basically, the county that it happened in, Emmet County, didn't want to prosecute because they didn't want to pay for a 6-count murder trial. They thought it was far too expensive. So from what I was reading, it kind of sounds like this was just floating about for someone to eventually take on that cost and like bring him to trial, which I didn't know that you could just say no thank you to putting a murderer in jail.
A murderer to a trial. What? That's,
Yeah. But all of the sources were basically saying Emmet County was like, me. And they didn't want to do it. And also it was partially because it was so expensive. And then also because they felt like because the 2 missing murder weapons had not been recovered, and because they didn't have Joseph Scalaro's fingerprints at the scene, it wasn't like a locked in, like this is for sure going to be a case that wins. And so the amount of money that they would have to spend with the lack of certain, what they deemed as critical evidence, led them to basically say, no. They didn't want to pay for disinterment either or the autopsies. So like literally nothing. They were being so cheap.
So how?
It feels fake, right?
Like someone who's in the legal or law enforcement world, can you please let us know if this is still something that could happen today?
Because how do you have in your small population of your county of like 30,000 some people, how do you have a whole family of 6 slaughtered at their family vacation home in an area where you rely on tourism and you rely on people coming in for the summer to bring their families and eat at your restaurants and shop on your shops and purchase your property and spend time at your inns and hotels? How do you say, no big deal? Whatever.
No thanks. But even beyond that, like if in any place in the world when there is a murder, to morally decide, you know what, we're not going to do an autopsy. We're not going to try to solve this really. We don't have the money. Sorry.
Morals and business.
It's one thing.
Neither way it doesn't make sense. Neither
It's one thing
lens.
for it to be like an actual cold case where there's no evidence, there's no suspects. It just leaves people confounded, which is awful. Don't get me wrong. Like that's horrible and awful. And like makes me mad. But to have the amount of evidence that seems to be, to me, apparent and a suspect and just decide, nah.
Right, because it's like, okay, you don't have the murder weapons, but you also have evidence that the exact bullets used match. It's just like, how many other people? You know that there are so few people in Michigan who have those bullets and have those guns. Yeah. In fact, he might be the only person that has the pairing of the 2. And out of all those people, let's say 7 other people have that exact rifle and all those bullets. How many of them also went to Joe's father-in-law's shooting range and shot that gun and bullets?
And how many of those people have a direct connection to Dick and had a fight with him?
And a 12-hour period of missing time. Joe, you're guilty, this is why man.
I couldn't be in law enforcement. It would be so infuriating.
Right? it's like, okay, you have a better chance of probably winning the Powerball 4 times over than chances of this all being horrible series of events and Joe's actually innocent, right?
Right.
Okay. So years pass by. Joe's not tried. He's not arrested. It's now 1972, 4 years later, and this mass murder has gone without an arrest for the entire 4 years. Emmet County is still covering their ears going, no, 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 no. We don't want to hear what's going on. We don't care. We don't want to spend our money. And the state police are still looking to get the bad guys. So they're kind of butting heads, obviously.
Right.
And the guy they have, all the evidence points to. So they're increasingly frustrated. Finally, though, Oakland County agrees to take on the case. It is where Dick's businesses were and where Joe had embezzled the money. So it made sense. There was still crime happening there. Prosecutors were seeking to try Joseph Scalaro on 6 charges of first-degree murder. Now, nobody in the police station or the prosecutor's office wants to believe that their people could have leaked that this is what they were working on. But it's assumed that perhaps someone did catch wind of what was going on and alerted Joe that he was going to be arrested soon, because Joseph Scalaro died very soon after by suicide, leaving behind a note which stated many of the different crimes that he had committed in terms of embezzling money and swindling companies. But the very last line said, P.S. I had nothing to do with the Robinsons. I'm a cheat, but I'm not a murderer. So some people did think that he was innocent all along. But some of those theories doesn't really make sense because people are like, oh, he didn't have enough time. Yeah, he did. He did. And others have also questioned how he was able to kill all 6 people without anyone escaping. People are like, oh, there must have been multiple murders, or how did everyone die? It was a tiny cabin, 2 people, the largest 2 people were already killed before being able to even defend themselves or anyone else. And then there's only one way in and one way out. And
it's just chaos.
A 7-year-old, a mom, and 2 preteens.
Yeah.
And he had 2 guns.
Yeah.
What do you mean, how did he kill everyone? They had nothing. They had nothing to defend themselves. And the one thing that they likely did pull up and grab was taken from them, and that was the blunt force object. So, horrible. Horrible, horrible.
Yeah. And there's just no closure. I mean, it's...
Right. Also, some people...
just an FYI, if people are hearing noise in my background, it's because my downstairs neighbor has a TV on very, very loud. Just wanted to...
Wow, I do hear it. That is super loud.
It's like vibrating through the whole house.
Dang. Should do like the Friends when they like stomp. Yeah, bang on it. Okay. There's another theory. Some people wonder if maybe it hadn't been Joe Scalaro, that maybe it was John Normal Collins, who was a convicted killer who went to prison for the murder of a female college student and is suspected in the killing of other college students. The reason people think perhaps he did it was because Collins was attending the same college as the oldest son, Richie, and rumor has it that they were assigned roommates during orientation week. So perhaps John was aware of who Richie was. But to go from college campuses to then driving many hours to kill a family with the same 2 guns that the dad's business owner has because you know the kid from a couple days of college orientation.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, how could that have happened? That doesn't make any sense. Right? Too many stacked coincidences.
Right.
So basically, some people are still like, all right, like, I don't know why everybody wants Joe Scalaro to be innocent. And maybe it's smart to try to like play the devil's advocate card and find where there are holes in the case.
Look at all options.
Exactly. All the skeptical people who are poking holes in this case and bringing up different theories and bringing up questions. It just, to me, they don't seem substantial enough, and they actually like leave very few questions unanswered, where it's like, oh, he, like the classic, like he didn't have time. Yes, he did. He like the guns, like it's just the chances of their theory being correct seem so incredibly more outlandish and more improbable statistically than it being Joe Scalaro.
And
which, of course, maybe it wasn't. We don't know.
Maybe it wasn't. It is hard to know. There's no way to get confirmation from Joe anymore. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. In my very minimal knowledge of psychology, to me, it makes sense if someone commits such a heinous crime. I mean, think about trauma in general. Like people's brains do wild things to disassociate from the memory, to completely like forget that it happened, whatever it may be. Like there is a very real possibility that Joe was acting in such rage and anger that the processing afterwards was so unbelievable to him that his brain made it seem like, or just like wiped the memory to be like, I didn't do this. Yeah. Because that was the only way for him to continue that's like on.
Almost every season of The Sinner, right?
Right.
Like that show.
Yeah.
Totally. It absolutely can happen. And so it's hard to piece together certain things when either someone is not cooperating with police or just doesn't have memory of what's going on and has an entirely different perspective of what happened and their involvement in it. But despite what happened, the Michigan State Police and the crime lab got a lot of praise for how they handled the case, because they were meticulously piecing together evidence and working diligently to cover all angles, leaving no leads ignored, which I was happy to hear, because I feel like so many times when we hear of unsolved cases or just cases where people were like wrongfully convicted, it's always like
there are a lot of loose ends in the investigation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was happy to hear that, like, despite Emmet County not being super supportive over 50 years ago of prosecuting the case, that the Michigan State Police were still putting in every single bit of effort and manpower that they could into this case. So, although we think we know who it is, there's always a possibility that it was someone else, or that someone else out there has more information that can help police lock in exactly what happened that night. So if you have any information on the case, you are still encouraged to call the Emmet County Sheriff's Office, as this case is technically unsolved and right now inactive. And we'll put the number in the show notes. Luckily, there is nothing online that I could find that indicates that this cottage is haunted, which makes me happy, because that means that the Robinson family, I hope, got to move on. Right? That their spirits aren't still there, and that there's no horrible residual stain of them being killed in this cottage.
Yeah.
But then again, I do wonder, like obviously when something horrible happens, it oftentimes attracts in something evil. And so I do wonder if whoever has this cottage now, if it still stands, or whoever lives in the area, if there's some sort of like evil that lurks in the woods or in this place. I don't know.
I don't know, and I hope not. I hope that this family just we're together in the afterlife, and we're all able to move on together, and that there's just peace.
I hope so too. So, Emmet County, they do have a lot of haunted spots. This place isn't super huge, right? Like the population isn't ginormous. There's 30,000 some people. Many of the little towns have just clusterings of homes near the lake and in the woods and whatnot. So for the low population, there's an awful lot of ghosts. And it's also a destination, right? So like if you want to have sort of like a mountainy winter or a summer escape, you might find yourself going to northern Michigan and into this county and into this area. And if you do so, if you make your way up north, you will likely find yourself driving on Route 31. On this road, You're not in any danger. Don't worry. There's no headlights chasing you and trying to get you off the road. No hitchhiking ghosts that I read of. But there is a motorist. So if you pay attention to who's around you, you just might spot a ghost biker. This man is riding a 3-wheeled motorcycle. The bike appears to be moving in slow motion, and his body, the rider, is transparent. And once you spot him, you better not blink because he doesn't stay visible for very long before disappearing. And
it's like the modern day headless horseman, I feel like, is riding a motorcycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wonder what he looks like. No one described what his face looks like, but I picture like the salt and pepper, like big handlebar mustache, you know, all leather, just tattoos on his knuckles, just like a Harley Davidson Santa Claus.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, if you're heading to this area, into this county, you're likely going to be staying at Harbor Springs or Petoskey, those 2 cities, or at least, in the very least, you might be dining there, shopping there, because these are the 2, they're small, but they're the 2 cities in the area. So if you're going out to eat, if you want to go get groceries or something, you're probably going to head over to this area.
Okay.
They have a lot to offer, ghosts included. The Perry Hotel is the go-to luxury resort for those who can spend over $500 on one night somewhere.
Oh, I'm going to look this up. Perry Hotel?
Oh, yeah. The Perry Hotel. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think it's actually called, I should have written down the whole name, but I think it's called like Stanley Perry Hotel or something like that.
Stafford's?
But it goes, Stafford's, there we go.
Oh,
Stafford's
it's so pretty.
Perry Hotel. Very pretty. The website, I think, is just the Perry Hotel. So a luxury stay, very expensive stay, but just because you're spending money doesn't guarantee you are having a ghost-free stay. There is a spirit of an elderly woman in a white nightgown. So we have a lady in white who's often seen wandering the gardens and exploring the hotel library. Oh, so it kind of sounds like you, Sabrina. I feel like this is who you're going to be when you're old and past, and then you're like, I'll just wander around in my white nightgown and read books in the library. Nobody knows exactly who this woman is, but they nicknamed her Doris and thought perhaps maybe she was either working in the hotel or was a hotel guest back when it opened. I think it opened in like 1899 or something like that. But like, you know, the early 1900s, she must have been there. But she sounds lovely, doesn't she?
She does.
She's not the only spirit there, though.
Okay.
It's funny that you brought up a headless horseman, Sabrina, because other guests and paranormal investigators on the property have captured images of mists and orbs. One picture even showed a full-bodied apparition, most of its body. A headless man dressed in 1800s stagecoach attire was photographed. He stood about 8 feet tall.
Ooh. What?
His coat was black with 5 buttons, and he wore white gloves. A headless horseman without his horse.
But 8 feet tall?
8 feet tall. Without his head. So probably 9 feet tall with his head.
Does that mean, okay, well now, because you said headless horseman without his horse, does it seem like he's almost on a horse, but the horse you can't see?
Oh, interesting, maybe. Or like on a carriage or something, because
8 feet
he
tall.
was in stagecoach attire.
Yeah.
So perhaps he was, you know, like would sit just slightly above in the carriage with the horses in front. I don't know. But that's a good point, Sabrina. Look at you. You're filling in all the gaps today.
They call me Gap Filler Sabrina.
Gap Filler Sabrina. She's on the case. You're not gonna whoa. I just stuttered so hard.
You know what? It's Gap Filler Sabrina, and then growing up, they used to call me Gap Tooth Sabrina because I had a massive gap in between my teeth.
Did you?
Oh, massive. Did
you have
so
to get a
cute,
frenectomy? Where they snipped that little piece of you?
Oh, no. It just braces. But because of it, my canine teeth, my adult ones, were growing in on the roof of my mouth up in towards each other.
Whoa. You were like a reverse vampire. You had no points. They were all just in there.
So then I
totally
had to pull
impacted
my baby teeth, and then one of them came in on its own, but the other one they had to go in surgically, put a chain on it, and connect it to my braces and slowly pull it out.
Oh God! Ouch! Oh man.
Yep.
Yeah,
But now
back
look
in the
at
day, I
him.
thought I was going to be an orthodontist, but then I started fainting in all the medical classes I was taking. So now
know what?
now we talk about ghosts on a podcast.
Who's winning now? I think current.
We are.
You.
Okay, so that inn, the Perry Hotel, or I guess it's not an inn, the Perry Hotel, lot going on. The Terrace Inn also has a white lady. We have some competition. Believed to be Elizabeth Sweet, who tragically passed after falling down a flight of stairs.
Oh.
She passed away in room 211, so if you end up staying there, perhaps you could check into that room.
Okay.
And her spirit is spotted by guests staying at this inn, wandering the building and keeping a watchful eye on people. She's very helpful. One time, a former owner had forgotten to turn off an oven and was wandering around the inn doing other things. And this oven is old, so the risk of it being on and igniting something is high. And this lady in white, our ghost Elizabeth, she alerted the owner to the oven being on by basically like clanging pots and pans in that area to draw her back to notice that the oven was still on. So she's a good ghost.
Oh, okay.
There's
That's
a small
amazing.
boy.
Love her.
Super amazing. Oh, there's some good ghosts in here. I chose some good stories to end on, guys, because it was heavy.
None of these ghosts seem scary. They all seem quite delightful.
They're not. They're all going to be delightful.
Oh, good.
Except for maybe the headless horseman guy, because he could be a little bit scary to witness.
To see, but doesn't seem like he's doing anything
No.
malicious.
He's just hanging out. There's also a small boy who is in the Terrace Inn, and he is usually seen by employees because he favors hanging out in the inn's basement. So he's a little basement boy. And there are two male spirits also here haunting the inn, believed to be the spirits of two workers who unfortunately were crushed to death in a construction accident on the site many years prior. So they're just all hanging out there. People see them, and that's who they think that these people are.
Okay.
But when these spirits aren't seen, they are very busy, shuffling up and down the halls, playing the piano, and even throwing phantom parties. So people hear parties going on. Isn't that cool?
Corinne, when we're ghosts, we should have like spooky galas and we'll invite all of our ghosty pals. Oh my gosh.
What?
We say, see you on the other side. We are going to have, once we're all dead, everyone, all the podcast phantoms.
In 100 years, when we're all dead.
We are going to have the best freaking party in the afterlife.
Ragers.
And it's called See You on the Other Side.
It's the annual, it's like, who was it? Jay-Z or something did like the annual white party where everyone would wear white and it was like the big thing. That's going to be us.
Annual
We're going
death
to be,
party.
Yeah. We're going to throw costumes required.
Hauntings?
Absolutely.
Mandatory.
It could be like the Monsters Inc. situation where like that's the party trick. Everybody, it's one of the activities. You can go haunt someone. You can haunt whoever you want. You just got to cross through the door and come back.
We'll pick like really fun we'll pick like places that aren't haunted but beautiful, like a hotel with a big ballroom. And then it will become haunted because of us.
And then we'll be attached to the Rainbow Bridge that brings all of the animals over to us. And it's basically like a cat and dog cafe.
Oh my
with
gosh.
like guinea pigs, horses, whoever you're missing, whoever you want to see. Llamas, we got them.
No allergies.
No allergies in the afterlife. I'm free!
All right, I'm on board.
The world is always trying to kill me with food and pets. Okay, so despite not getting invited to the party, I do think that people who have an interest in going to this inn should still go. And if you do go, you must promise me and Sabrina that you will read the journal at the front desk, which is kept there to chronicle for guests to write down all of the paranormal experiences that they've ever experienced.
Yes.
And then you must tell us what it says.
If I ever own an Airbnb, I'm going to create a book like that, but not promote the Airbnb as haunted. And it probably won't be haunted, but I'm going to make it seem like it's haunted by at the entry next to the like, here's the information and like, here's the Wi-Fi and please lock up and here's what you need to do for check-in and check-out. There'll be another book right next to it and I will create 5 different handwritings and I will write personal encounters with the ghosts so that people who check in are like, what have I gotten myself into?
It just says like suspicious activity. Yeah. That's the name of the book. I would actually panic. I'd be like, oh my God, I can't stay here. I'm not safe. What if someone's outside creeping in? So scary.
They always are.
They always are. Bigfoot, hello, where are you? A few more experiences for us to end on, paranormal wise. Shop owners. They say this place is haunted. This whole county. There's always something going on. One of the shop owners, Arlington Jewelers, the shop owner was panicked one day because a $10,000 necklace went missing. And he was looking everywhere. That's a huge loss.
Very, expensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the necklace is suddenly right back where it was supposed to be. Just by passing it, looking at it, everyone going, oh my God, it's missing. It just suddenly popped back up because a ghost took it. A ghost borrowed it. And apparently this is a theme, in a lot of those shops. There's things that go missing. Wow. And then they reappear, things that get moved around. Haunted locations include, but are not limited to, that place, the Arlington Jewelers, the circus shop, the clothes post, and so many more. There's also areas of these towns that are ghost towns, so like actual sections of that are completely deserted, leaving behind these dilapidated buildings and old abandoned graveyards. So very ripe for hauntings, if you ask me.
If you ask me.
I didn't even notice that I did that.
I kind of loved it. We should do a whole episode where we talk like, once there was a ghost.
Once when I was a ghost. I like it. Let's do it.
It'll be a special episode.
On a lighter note, if you buy or rent a cottage or a home here, there's a chance that you may encounter a very friendly ghost. Oh. A family in Harbor Springs did just that, and they lovingly nicknamed this spirit Axel the Friendly Ghost. So hopefully you get Axel the Friendly Ghost too if you go here. A woman said that her grandmother was painting one day and spoke out loud saying that she wanted a proper easel to paint on. So it was just kind of like a toss away comment to no one, just kind of talking to herself.
I would love that
passing
too.
Comment. And the next day, a delivery from Sears was dropped off at the house. The man came up and delivered a very nice easel. None of the family members said that they ordered this for her. So the grandma, being very confused, calls this company and says, who ordered this? And Sears had no record of the purchase. They had no record of any deliveries in that area for the past 24 hours. So that wasn't their man. That wasn't their truck. That wasn't their package. And they also had no record of an easel even being a product that they offered in their store. So Axel clearly can pull his weight in the afterlife.
Whoa. What a powerful freaking ghost.
I know.
And so generous and kind.
So
and
generous.
Quick. It's like faster than Amazon 2-day delivery.
Oh my gosh, I know. It makes me wonder too, was there someone in grandma's life who had already passed on, a loved one, who maybe in the afterlife you get one big thing that you can help someone with. You have like one big giant burst of energy where you can do whatever you want. And they were like, this is it. She wants an easel. That's what I'm going to use my power on. I don't know.
What would you do?
I have no idea what I would do. I think I'd have to wait. I have to see what people need most. What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on who I'm giving to. If it's like my child or something, I guess it depends. Like, what is it like? You can save someone's life, or you can give them an easel, or give them a gift. I'd rather save someone's life,
Right. Yeah, and maybe that's why the gift of the easel came so much later, because it was like grandma was older and she felt fulfilled with her life, and there was no savings needed. Yeah. She never needed it. So it was time to just give her that easel.
I have started painting lately. Now I really want an easel. Ghosts? Please?
Ghosts. Hello?
Hello? Are you
I feel
here?
like we're tempting them. Hello. Good. Okay. Great seeing you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Anyway, that was supposed to be the Robinson forest, but instead we got the Robinson family murders in Michigan and some interesting hauntings around that area.
Yeah. Quite devastating murder case.
Horrible. I can't believe I hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I mean, that's the tragic thing is there are so many murders that are like mainstream. And I hate even saying that, but it's true. And then there's so many that just, go under the radar and you don't hear about and don't get attention in the same way.
I know. And two, I think this did take up a lot of airtime and lived in people for so long in that area too, right? But because people think they know who did it, I think it though unsolved, it doesn't feel as cold case as so many others.
Right. Well, I have a listener story that is about an unsolved murder.
Okay.
This is from our listener, Megan, and it's called Unsolved Murders Haunt My Town's Cemetery. Hi, Spooky Pals. The story I'm about to share is not one that has happened to me, but has happened to many people in my small hometown. This story comes from my brother, Kyle, with my cousin, Bradley, and my cousin's fiance, Kaylin. What they experienced is what everyone has experienced when visiting this cemetery. Okay, so for some background, we live in a super small town in Michigan called Decatur. Decatur. I'm probably saying that wrong.
I've seen it written so many times. And I know. Have no idea how to say it.
And I feel like we've done this before. Like I feel like either I'm having deja vu or I've been in this exact moment and I have not learned.
Third time's a charm. This is number 2. You can go on.
It's actually called a village and only has one stoplight. The majority of the town is farmlands with a tiny town square. All of our schools were combined into one building, and I graduated with a class of only 49 students. Things in this town travel fast because of the size, and everyone knows everyone, and everyone knows of the Morris murders. The Morris murders happened on September 28th, 1879. Charles Henry Morris and his wife Esther Jones Morris were mysteriously shot to death in their home. No possessions had been taken except for a horse probably used so that the murderer could escape. The local police and a detective agency could not solve the case. They even took a suspect and tortured him to confess, but he stood his ground and stated that he didn't do anything and knew nothing.
Wow.
To this day, this case remains unsolved. Anyway, on to the spooky stuff. The cemetery that the Morrises' graves reside is a very old, unkept cemetery. It's in an odd location and is fenced off. But there's one opening in the fence that allows people to gain access. Of course, most people who go to this cemetery are people trying to prove a point that it's not haunted, or to prove that it is. I've personally only seen the cemetery in the daytime, but the vibes of the cemetery completely change at night, according to my brother.
Ooh.
So, like many people, my brother and the others I mentioned decided to go to the cemetery at night. They parked their car off to the side of the dirt road and snuck their way in. My brother told me that the air just felt heavy. It felt hard to breathe, like constant pressure on their chests. They had to be careful and look where they were walking in this cemetery because of how unkept it was. There were tripping hazards everywhere. Gravestones, roots, branches. It's definitely not a place you can run in, plus that's disrespectful to the cemetery anyway. But when my brother and Kaylin looked up, they saw a woman running in this cemetery. She was wearing a long white dress that looked very old. My brother described her running as if she was floating. Her body looked as if it was running, but she floated above the gravestones, which no regular person would have been able to run easily or at all through this graveyard. That was enough proof for them, and they demanded that my cousin and all of them leave. He agreed, and they got back in their car. My cousin grabbed the keys, put them in, turned them, and nothing. The car wouldn't start.
No. Oh.
Bradley tried multiple times to get the car to start, and it should have started because it was a brand new car. And it wasn't until another car drove by them on the dirt road that their car could start. Once it did, they booked it out of there.
Oh my gosh.
Every person that I have met who has been to the Morris graves has all had this exact same experience. Seeing the woman running, the car not starting, the heavy air. It's all consistent. I personally would love to go there myself, but none of my friends are willing to tag along. I just want to see if the same thing happens to me.
Knowing exactly what happens and like having that blueprint, it does make me want to go. Because I'm like, okay, if I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when you're scared to go on a ride in an amusement park and they're like, okay, there's a 30-foot drop here and then it goes around and then something pops out. Like you feel more prepared, right? And then you're more willing to go.
Right. And it doesn't, I mean, the car not starting is very scary, but it doesn't seem malicious per se.
Mm.
Okay, Megan says, I have many other paranormal stories like me getting haunted by my great-grandma, my grandma predicting people's deaths, my mother seeing the same woman in white at a different cemetery, and my brother living in a haunted house where he saw an apparition climbing up the basement stairs.
What?
Let me know if you'd like to hear them. Yes, Megan, please. As always, see you on the other side, Megan.
Oh my God. Especially crawling up the stairs. That's my worst nightmare.
Crawling in general, just no thank you.
Crawling.
No, thank you.
It's a hard no. Man, it's going to be tough when we have babies and they just crawl all the time. We're not crawling. We're going straight to walking.
I will say, though, sometimes I'm just so tired and like depressed that crawling is all I can manage.
Do you ever crawl up the stairs? I guess I don't really have any stairs.
I don't really have stairs
anymore. But you know when you're little, when you're just like running up the stairs and you do all fours?
Just all fours. Yeah.
Man.
Oh my gosh, wait.
I want to go to this place.
There's a movie. I think it might even be called Megan. Have you seen this trailer?
No.
It's a movie. Basically, it's with the girl from Girls and from Us. No, not Us. Get Out. The dark-haired girl.
Mm.
She, I guess, like basically takes in her niece when her niece is like, or her sibling passes away, and her niece is like really depressed. She's young. And so she decides to introduce her to like the project she's been working on, which is this AI child.
Yes, I did see it. It looks like Elizabeth Olsen to me. The AI
doll?
child looks like Elizabeth Olsen.
Okay, a little bit. Yeah. But it is
I couldn't get over it.
There's one shot in the trailer where she's like standing and then all of a sudden she chases someone in the woods, but like gets on all fours and chases.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I want to see it. It honestly,
I do
that
too.
movie feels like that scene in the woods is totally my nightmare that I used to have about my American Girl doll coming to life and trying to kill me in the woods.
Yeah. It's
all
terrifying.
She was
or
the
my size Barbie, life size Barbie,
whatever. Barbie.
Yeah, those things are terrifying.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Pretty intense. But man, yeah. I don't know what to think of the woman in white too, because part of me is like, oh my gosh, that's so scary. I wonder if she's chasing them. I wonder like what she's doing. But then I have to flip it and it's like, okay, well, something horrible had happened to the people that are buried here. Yeah. She's just unfortunately like replaying her running for her life or doing what she wished she had done and been or could have been able to do.
Or is she the protector of the cemetery and she's like, hey, silly little teenagers, get out of here. This is not for you to like
not for your
trapeze around for your fun. Yeah.
True.
And the car not starting could also just be like, energy interference.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Man, it's hard because it's like, I kind of want to go now, but then also if she doesn't want us to go, then I don't want to disrespect her. But then I'm like, does she actually not want us to go, or am I assuming things? It's the lose-lose.
It is. It's hard. See, this is why we need to tap into our abilities. Corinne,
We need clear communication lines.
Yeah. And then we can ask the spirit.
You can
what
be
do
the
you
astral
want?
projector and I will be the medium.
What if I can be, what is it? Where I channel spirits?
A medium?
I temporarily leave my body so that a spirit can come in.
Possession?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I be? No, but there's called something. Maybe it's a medium, but I'm
you're channeling as, I think it is sort of mediumship.
Is it
or
just
are you
channeling?
thinking about I think it's just channeling, right?
Okay. Take me over.
Take me over. Man.
Man. Man, oh man.
Man, oh man. Well,
Ghost, oh ghost.
ghosts will ghost. And we will continue to podcast week after week. Now I have another topic that I have back on my list that I thought I was doing today. But
A nice teaser
So,
for
yeah,
the future.
you're promised at least one more episode because I didn't do that. But we appreciate all of you. Thank you for coming here.
If you have ghost stories, please email them to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. And there are so many ways to follow along and support us. There's Patreon. We have live streams every single month for if you're in the Only Phantoms and above. You get stickers. You get bonus episodes. There's so many fun things. Holiday
So many
cards
fun
when
things.
the holidays come around.
And eventually when we go on tour again, you'll have first access to the tickets.
We also have
Support us
social
by
media.
following us on...
Yeah, you
Go
go.
ahead.
You take it. Take it away.
Okay. I'll give you the space you need, though, Sabrina. I can be over here. I can listen to you.
No. I took up a lot of space today.
all day long. What do you mean? I talked for the past 90 minutes straight.
That's true.
We have
but
social media.
I contributed.
Yes, you did.
Gap-
Yes, you
gap
basically
tooth.
solved the case.
Gap solving.
Gap tooth Sabrina. I feel like you're just like a Wild West cartoon from the future. It's like you time traveled, but you just don't know how to get back. So now you're like 12-year-old gap tooth Sabrina, like the lead detective in an old Western film.
That TM. I'm about to write that. Gotta go. So
Wild
sorry.
ideas. Follow us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We have Facebook group. We have Discord channel. All of those things. If you don't know how to find them, visit our website, twogirlsoneghost.com. You can find all of those details basically just by Googling us.
Yes.
And thank you to our editors, Eden Manning and the whole team at Upfire Digital. Thank you. Excited for another year with you. And we will.
We love you. And we will.
See you on the other side.
I really embrace Gap Tooth Sabrina. I'm like, Wild West. Okay, bye.
Bye.